so good to see you all again. Here with us.
Don't be frightened. Look at this little Scarecrow. Why is this cruel? He doesn't like humans too much. Now, take a while, sit down, and listen to the tales I have.
The U.S. wildfires are not an accident. By Jupiter Stan. Narration by Jack Sanders. July through September is considered fire season in the western United States. Because of the summer heat, most of the vegetation dries out during this time, creating the perfect opportunity for a raging wildfire. One flick of a cigarette or one loose campfire, and a whole forest might go up. I don't know if you guys heard about the fires that have been raging all over California and parts of Utah, but last I heard, the one closest to me in Utah, about 10 miles away, is less than 4% contained. Because of this extremely wildfire, and the difficulty firefighters have found in containing it, most of the canyon roads have been closed down. My state's been lucky though, at least none of us had to evacuate our homes like those in California have. Can't imagine losing everything in a fire that could have been prevented. I'd be so bitter about it. But Utah suffered in other ways. The air, which is already notoriously bad in Utah County because of the surrounding mountains making it almost impossible for total air circulation, is even worse with the fire burning. Smoke continuously hangs in the air and my entire house smells like a campfire. Local authorities have cautioned parents of young children to keep them inside as much as possible to avoid breathing complications. Authorities have also warned everyone not to enter the canyon for any reason. They say the fire is too dangerous and is uncontrollable at this present time. Additionally, the local fire departments and ranger stations have been so overwhelmed that a few weeks ago they began asking for volunteers. My boyfriend James signed up almost immediately with two of his friends. He's always wanted to be a firefighter, but the ranger he signed up with assured him he would not be anywhere near the actual fire. Instead, he'd be completing and filing paperwork, that what the rangers were too short-handed to do themselves. James was assigned to a ranger station up the canyon and will work shifts like the actual rangers do. 3 days on, 3 days off. The first few times he went, he told me it was really boring, but he loved being a part of something that was bigger than himself. He planned to go through training to become a real firefighter later this year. Secretly, I was glad he was bored with the paperwork. That meant he wasn't in danger. But I knew the trouble was coming when he came home in an excited rush after one of his regular 3-day shifts. He told me that they had asked him to be part of the crew that brought food and drinking water to the firefighters currently stuck up the canyon with the fire. Of course he accepted, but I was angry with him. He should have talked to me about it first. And I had a terrible feeling in the pit of my stomach when he told me he was going. I felt something bad might happen to him, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. After all this time, all I could do was wait. I'm still also quite a bit worried about the events that played out after the trip, and I need some advice and maybe some help in explaining what I saw. James was to report to the station on August 1st to complete a mandatory training exercise that lasted 2 days. After that, the crew would go further into the canyon and locate the firefighters to deliver their supplies. The total trip would take 5 days, and he promised he would be home on the night of August the 7th. He wouldn't have cell reception, but there was a satellite phone that could be used in case of an emergency. Those 7 days were the worst of my life. Couldn't sleep because of worry, and I tortured myself with Google searches on the statistics of yearly firefighter deaths. I kept reminding myself that he wouldn't be fighting the fire. He was only delivering supplies to the firefighters. But when the clock ticked to 12 a.m. on August the 7th, the night my boyfriend should have returned home, I launched into a frenzy of panic. I called the local fire department and the local sheriff's station in town asking for information, but nobody could give me anything. Most people didn't even know about the trip that the volunteer crew had taken. My sister came over to stay with me, and it was a great comfort having her here with me, but it didn't change my worry or my distress. On August 10th, 3 days after my boyfriend was to return home, I was living in a daze. Time passes slowly or not at all. I took off work in order to cope with the stress I had countered, and I was convinced my boyfriend had died. I was only waiting on the call to confirm it. While Google searching more annual firefighter deaths, a notification popped up on the top of my screen. It said, "Photos from Jamie's iPhone have been successfully uploaded to the iCloud." I quickly clicked on the notification and began to cry. I knew James has kept his phone set to manual uploads, meaning he would have to initiate any sort of upload. Maybe he wasn't dead or fatally wounded after all. But as I scrolled through the pictures that he had uploaded, my heart began to sink even further than it had sat before. There were 5 photographs that had been uploaded. Before I could click on any of them, I got a phone call. It was the chief of the fire department calling to inform me that James was okay. Thank God. They had run into some trouble with their vehicles, and that's why the trip had taken 3 days, longer than expected. James was currently being treated for minor cuts and burns at the hospital, and the chief told me I could come get him. I flew out the door and sped down the road. I was so relieved. My heart was pumping so fast, and the 39-minute drive to the hospital felt like a millisecond. I stood in the doorway and James stood to hug me. He apologized for scaring me and told me he wished he hadn't left me alone to worry about him. I forgave him instantly, just happy to have him home safely. I asked him what had happened. He said he couldn't remember. The doctor then stepped in to explain James had a combination of altitude sickness and smoke inhalation that caused a form of amnesia. It may also be due to his extreme stress and shock. The young doctor also told me lack of sleep could be to blame. In short, James's doctors didn't know what causes short-term amnesia. I was told James might regain these memories from the trip he took, but he also may not. They assured me that James had passed all of the memories and psych exams, and from now on, he should be fine. James and I had spent the last few days at home, and I helped him recover. I tried to help him piece together his memories, but for now it seemed useless. He couldn't remember anything. It wasn't until yesterday, August 15th, that I remembered the notification I'd received. I hoped the pictures James had uploaded could help jog his memory, so I pulled up my laptop and logged onto our iCloud storage. The 5 pictures had all been taken on August 5th, a few hours between each one. The first thing I noticed? All the pictures had a neon tint to them, like a filter had been placed over them. The colors of the flowers and the leaves were vibrant, and this struck me as quite odd. I'll remind you this is fire season, and the vegetation should be dried up. The first picture was a close-up of an insect on James's finger. It looked like a ladybug at first glance, but closer inspection revealed the bug had 8 legs and its color was green. Rather than the circular spots, they seemed to be octagon-shaped. The next picture was a grove of trees. It seemed average enough, but you see the trees weren't like the regular trees found in the area. Never seen anything like them. The roots had pushed the base of the trunk several feet from the ground, almost like long spidery legs. I zoomed in closer on the picture to see one of the trees had several kind of leaves growing from one branch. Pine needles, oak leaves, shrub leaves, and even a few tea tree leaves. The third picture was of a deer that was light green in color. First I figured it had been photoshopped, but after closer inspection, found the amount of time it would have taken for shading and tinting would be enormous. It was impossible the photo could be retouched. I was also surprised and disgusted to find the deer had 3 sets of antlers growing all down its spine, and then the one hoof that peeked out from the underbrush had 4 claws as long as switchblades. Since then, I've done some background searches to see if the photo had been retouched. I can't find anything similar to it. The fourth picture featured a tree trunk that had been scorched, but rather than sap pouring from the open wounds in its bark, a thick red liquid similar to blood in color and consistency seemed to pour out. This picture, although the least surprising, made my hair on my arms stand straight up. The tree, in fact, was bleeding like an animal would. The last photo was actually a video. The thumbnail was a raging fire. I looked at James, and his facial expression told me he didn't remember anything. He asked me if I was messing with him, and his voice shook when he spoke. He was sweating, and I could tell he was distressed. I apologized for pressing to remember and helped him into bed. Later that night, I watched the video alone, and it was horrifying. The video, about 30 seconds long, was filmed from behind a bush, and has obviously been filmed on a handheld device, as it was extremely shaky. The video depicted 15 or more men in hazmat suits wielding flamethrowers. They sprayed the flames all across trees and even onto some animals that had been trapped in their circle. The footage was neon like the pictures had been. The trees and creatures in this video looked strange too, like they had been morphed and changed into something otherworldly. This video convinced me that the photos hadn't been retouched or meddled with. The cost of equipment alone to produce a video with such realistic looking creatures would be well into hundred thousands. Most disturbingly, as the creatures burned alive, their squeals sounded eerily human-like. The fire raged and its roar was deafening. When the video ended, I sat staring at my computer screen for a very long time. It seems like those fires, at least the ones James had documented, weren't the product of a loose campfire or a rogue cigarette. They seemed to be intentional. They're containing something. They're killing something.